Well, hello everybody, and welcome to episode number 16 of Cardboard Time. I am Arwen.
This is Justin.
And Justin, I've got to go right into the beer of the day. So I was downstairs trying to figure out exactly what I was going to drink tonight for our podcast, which I already drank it. Because I was so excited about it. You remember the last podcast, what I was drinking, correct?
Yes, I do. I believe that was the Jenny Cream Ale.
Last podcast, I was drinking the Honey Brown by Genesee.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was the other, I don't know.
Yeah, spoilers.
The other Take Me Back.
Spoilers, I found a Jenny Cream Ale in the back of my fridge. So I decided to have that, and it was so good. But it was, again, ice cold like I talked about. It's disgusting if you have it even remotely warm, but if you drink it down and it's cold, oof, it is so, so good. I gave it a 3.75, and it hadn't shown up on my ratings for some reason. I don't know, like all these classic beers I drank in college and that just aren't showing up on my Untappd, so...
And we just have this compulsion for always purchasing beers we haven't seen before.
Yeah, exactly. Forgetting the good ones or the mediocre ones that we really, really liked and just have fond memories of.
Do you remember what I had last week? Because I think I had that same problem. Like, wow, this hadn't ended up in my app that I've had for probably 10 years.
Yeah, I can't remember what you had last week.
Well, me either. It's a mystery. We'll never know.
It must not have been that good.
I'm not going to go back and listen to a podcast.
No, who would do that?
Who would do that?
But what did you have this week?
So this week, I am down in Virginia right now, and I got myself an Aviator Wide Open Red. Apparently, I have had this before, and I wasn't thrilled, and, sorry to say that's the case again. It's just not adding up for me. It's got a deep, rich flavor, which I imagine some people could enjoy, and for me, I'm just like, yeah, it's a little too caramely, maybe. Not sweet, just like burnt caramely. Are you hearing that echo while I'm thinking of taking a drink in the can?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Like I'm on old-time radio.
Yes, take a swig of that Aviator Wide Open Red.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna drink it, and it's acceptable, but
from Fuquay Varina, North Carolina, if I'm correct.
I don't know how you called that. Like, geez.
So we were doing the pre-recording, and Justin's holding the can up. I'm looking at the show notes, and he has Aviator Wide Open Red. And I look at the can, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, Aviator. That's from Fuquay Varina." And
like,
they've
who knows what that is? Like 3 minutes to find the location on the can, and yes, she was correct.
The only reason that I remember that is they have a fantastic smokehouse right there in town.
Physically there and remembered
I physically
where you
went there.
Yeah, all right. Give you credit there.
I used to live like 45 minutes away from the place, so
it wasn't you being in some idiot savant about beer brewery locations.
I mean, also that, but I do have that gift or curse or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, you are a bit of a trivia queen.
Yeah, that's true.
No one's ever going to ask that question either. FYI.
No, I know. Nobody will ever ask me. Arwen, for $1 million, where is the Aviator Brewery located? Speaking of which, tonight's vaccine lottery.
Oh.
In Ohio. So I don't know who won.
If this podcast doesn't get edited and posted, it might have been you.
If you don't hear this, it was me. I was off buying more board games.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
So speaking of travel, what you're doing right now, I got to head to Pittsburgh a couple weekends back and see my parents for the first time since October physically, which was great. We had kind of a make-up Mother's Day dinner, or brunch actually, at the Grand Concourse restaurant, which is fantastic if you're ever there. Had some very good food. Got to play Calico with my mom, which I was waiting to do forever. She's a quilter. And this is like the game that I'm trying to show everybody. So she really, really loved it.
I'm glad to hear that, because I know it's, there's always that learning curve getting mom into gaming.
She was, I think it's a testament to the game. She picked it up right away and didn't have a problem with it. It was very easy for her to pick up. So
did Dad even attempt?
No, Dad was upstairs napping in the room. We just went down and drank coffee. I learned how to cross stitch too, which was a lot of fun.
Oh, it's now we both need to do that. Didn't you see my Star Wars cross stitch?
I did.
Yeah, now we gotta sit down together like old ninnies and do some cross stitching together.
Yeah,
it's gonna be fun.
It's gonna be fun and
except we'd be board gaming instead, and then I don't know when we'd get the cross stitching in.
Exactly.
Oh, there's just too many things to do.
I know. So many hobbies. All right. Well, let's go check on the Shelf of Shame. The Shelf of Shame is now down to 177. It is down 2. I had 3 new additions to it. One was Sheepy Time, which was a review copy from AEG that I had played online before. We are going to be talking about that in this episode a little bit later. I also went to my favorite game store and bought Bullets and Hadrian's Wall, which both
Trivia question, what is Arwen's favorite game store?
Got a lot of games up in Parma, Ohio.
I knew that one too. Also yes. No $1 million prize.
So Bullet, I got to play in a solo mode. It was extremely good. You're basically puzzling these tiles that you're pulling out of a bag and putting down in the representative columns, trying to make sure that your columns don't overflow. You're basically trying to manipulate everything on the board so it lines up perfectly so you can use a pattern to clear everything off. It's supposed to be reminiscent of those bullet hell games, where you've got like lots of bullets on the screen and that. For video games, rather, I should clarify. It's a really fun game. It plays really, really well solo, and it's just a basic score attack mode, but you have a versus mode, you have a cooperative mode where you're all going up against a boss. There's a lot that's packaged in that box.
All right, now I'm intrigued about that now.
Yep. So that's definitely one that I don't think it'd be too hard to teach. So we might be able to get Joanna and Allie to the table and be able to all 4 play it. That would be pretty interesting. Yeah, I really enjoyed that one. Hadrian's Wall is kind of the talk of the town the past couple of weeks. It was recently released, flip and write, and I have to say that it is the best spreadsheet that I have ever played in my entire life.
Is that a good thing?
It is a good thing.
Okay.
I'm a
just
nerd.
checking. I mean, we played some spreadsheets, of course. So
I'm a nerd, and that is 100% a spreadsheet game. The most complex blank. I think I'd consider it a flip and write, that I've ever played. Basically, you're taking turns, going through and exchanging resources for other resources, filling up tracks, and scoring points. It's a spreadsheet, but it's in the most wonderful way.
I mean that in the nice possible sense. You are a spreadsheet.
It really is a solid game, though. Not much in the way of player interaction. It's definitely one of those kind of solitaire multiplayer experiences. It was definitely interesting. One issue that I had with it was definitely the color blindness thing that came up. They use blue and purple, which it's not too terrible when you're dealing with the actual components themselves. But when you're looking at the sheet, it does get a little bit dicey to try to distinguish between the two. However, you're able to go and look at the manual and kind of decipher what the designer meant for most of them. So that was a positive. It just kind of stalled play a little bit until I figured out, okay, well, let me go to the manual and see if it's in there. And lo and behold, for the most part, it was. So that was at least a plus. But I'll be playing quite a bit of that coming up. I've got a little bit of time off that I think I'm going to do some solo games. That's definitely going to be one that's back on the table very soon. We got together and played Die of the Dead.
We did. We'll talk about that next time.
And we will talk about that next time. We also played Sheepy Time, which again, later on in the episode. And then finally, I got the Rival Networks to the table. And this is an absolutely wonderful adaptation of the original Networks to a two-player format. Really kind of changes the formula up enough, but still keeps all those elements that we loved, especially the kitschy artwork and, you know, the weird show titles and everything. I really, really dug that.
Wait, two-player, not solo? You played this with someone, not me?
Two-player. Yes, I did. I played it with Allie.
Oh, jeez.
We got it to the table, and it wasn't really bad to teach her at all either. It was pretty simple.
Here I am, near the hometown of our favorite, not exactly local access news television station, and I haven't even played the Rival Networks.
Wow. Yeah, I know. It's not like this isn't going to get to the table again. I know my history of playing, you know, new
game
games.
Once, and then someday we'll see that
someday
again.
I'll play it again.
Yeah.
No, this one is such a good two-player option. So kind of add that to our list of really good two-player games. This one's tight. There's like area control to it, which is interesting. You know, really, really well implemented.
Well, then maybe we play it again so I can help you review it.
Yes.
And then we can cover that.
Yes. Absolutely.
And then we can talk all about Star News.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Well, on to what we've been playing. The first game that I want to talk about is Machi Koro Bright Lights Big City. Machi Koro plays from 2 to 5 players in 30 minutes, designed by Masao Suganuma. The artist is Noboru Hata, and it's published by IDW and Pandasaurus. This re-implementation of Machi Koro sees players trying to build their city and be the first to develop all their landmarks. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Machi Koro, players take turns rolling 1 or 2 dice and get to take any actions of buildings with that number on them. Cards provide players with money or special actions that they use to build their engine by constructing more buildings and landmarks. The first player to develop all of their landmarks is the winner. So this version actually adds in the expansion content into the original game. Machi Koro is a game that I sold off a little while ago, and we decided to get this version to the table to see what we thought. So Justin, what were your thoughts on it?
So I think first, I get the impression there are some minor revamps to the game. Maybe a little streamlining and improvements to some of the cards, right? Is that accurate?
For the most part, there's a little bit of streamlining, a little bit of a change in how your market is set up. It actually uses one of the variants. And then it also incorporates the expansion content into the game. So,
yeah, I remembered the market now. I like the random market as opposed to the pre-structured market of the original game. Some of the cards in there that were new, or at least I thought they were new, it seemed like a little more weighty, like they had more effect, and so that was enjoyable to me. And some of the cards in there were like real risky, like
super risky,
big highs, lows. Maybe they'll never get anything, and so that was interesting. I think overall it felt a little cleaner than the original, so it was an improvement. Now, I still like Machi Koro. I know a lot of people don't. Out of our circle, I'm probably the only one who actually likes it. Nobody wants to play it with me.
Well, but, your wife certainly doesn't
absolutely does not like playing that with me, no. And so I don't know. I can't describe exactly what I like about it. It's just kind of fun and light, and there's a lot of chance in it that just adds some excitement for me. I think the old game had this problem, and it still does, that there's this potential for runaway victory, which I absolutely did. And I just stole the show. And we could see it coming, too. Once it started, there was no stopping it. And I think a lot of people aren't going to enjoy a game like that. We also kind of like a lot of take that in our games, sticking it to the other player. But there were a few take that options in this that felt like just unnecessarily mean, heavy-handed. It just upset the balance. And that's, again, how I ran away with the victory, because I was just being brutal. And there was nothing you could do back about it, really. And in fact, they seem stronger in this than the original game. So that wasn't necessarily an improvement there. You know, it's just I had the ability to just own you on it, and that kind of ruined the fun on both ends because I don't like beating you that bad. I just want to beat you, not that bad.
You still want it to be fun and enjoyable, and
not a embarrassing blowout. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, unless I thought you deserved to fail, but you did nothing wrong. I just made some choices that absolutely dominated. You know.
Yep.
So anyway. I don't know. Maybe if some of those take that cards were a little softened, so they worked better if you're behind or something like that, and so the person in the lead doesn't just keep dominating the lead. There are ways around it. Maybe it makes the game too complicated and more wordy, but I don't know. That said, I still like Machi Koro. I can't exactly say why. I seem to be kind of standalone on that. I would replace the regular base game and expansion that I have with this, and heck, we may do that trade.
Yeah.
You know, that said, that's kind of my opinion. I still like it. I just think I'm not going to be able to get it out a lot because not many people like playing it with me.
So I'm going to absolutely agree with you on the random marketplace. I think that it works so much better than the original established marketplace that you had. I really like that. I thought it was a very welcome change.
It forces you to change up your strategy a bit so you can't just kind of focus on one thing. Keeps it exciting.
I think part of that went into there was a definitive issue with the original game when you were playing with two people, and you never really needed to go to a second die with the two-player game. That's one thing. Like, I would blow out anybody who would go for a second die, and when I was going head to head. And this really, I think, in conjunction with the marketplace kind of changing over constantly, you couldn't just go for those cards constantly that just rewarded you for just taking the 1 through 6. Yeah, and not advancing. I would always unlock my, second die last because that was the easy thing to do. That was something that I did notice was definitely different. And I'm also going to agree with you on the take that. I mean, it felt brutal. There was the one card in particular.
I could feel it.
Oh, yeah, you could feel it, and you were the one that was winning. There was one card in particular that basically said, okay, trade one of your cards for one of your opponents. Well, it got to the point where there was one of our cards that was absolutely useless, and you traded that for something that I had saved up and spent a lot of money on.
And basically built part of your engine around, so I just cut your engine in half.
Yeah, exactly. It seemed like a little bit too much for me. And I think that's why I kind of tend to more of those games like Valeria and Space Base, because they don't seem to have that, super mean-spiritedness. Not to say that you can't take that in a game, because, I mean, sometimes it's fun, but when it gets so heavy-handed, like it was in this, it just doesn't seem to be quite as enjoyable as, some other games that we really like that take that mechanisms. So overall, definitely an improvement. I would rather play this over the base game, but I still don't feel a need to own a copy of it. Especially if you have a copy of it, by chance you want to go and, hey, let's play Machi Koro. I won't say no. I won't say,
you might say, what else you got?
I'll say, geez, I've got 177 other games that, need to be played, so could we do one of those instead? But someday, if I get to the point where that isn't an issue and you say, I want to play Machi Koro, lots of conditional statements there, but I wouldn't turn down a game of it. That said, this is leaving my collection. I don't see the need to own it. It's going to join its older brother in somebody else's house, which it sounds like you might be a good candidate for it.
It might be my house, but then in which case I'll get rid of the base game that
That's
I think
fine.
I also previously got from you.
It's just the cycling of Machi Koro over and over again.
Why? But it's just me.
Yeah. Yep.
Anyway.
There is a legacy game that came out. That's like the last thing that I want to play.
Legacy Machi Koro?
Legacy Machi Koro.
What?
Yeah.
But now I want to play that.
I know, but we have so many legacy games that we'll never get to it.
I know. We still have Queen's, what's it?
Rise of Queensdale, yeah.
Yeah, geez, It's been over a year.
I know.
All I remember is that my guy's name was Colby.
Yes, I can't even remember mine.
I think that was Nacho Calderon.
I think it was. I do think I used Nacho
unintentionally
Calderon
both named our characters cheeses.
I think once I saw you name yours Colby, I had to go with that. So yeah, so that's my final judgment of the game. Again, leaving the collection, no need to have it on the shelf. So it's out of here.
I guess I'd probably still rather play Space, but there's just something about Machi Koro that I can't give up.
It just resonates with you.
Yeah, but I can't help any listening because I don't know why. It's sickness.
And again, it's not a bad game. It's just...
No, it's not. It seems to upset everyone I play with it.
There's just some things that I feel the other games do better. That was Machi Koro, Bright Lights, Big City.
So I think for Sheepy time, I think we actually have a lot of valuable things to say about it that make sense instead of me saying, I don't know. But Sheepy time, 1 to 4 players, 30 to 45 minutes. Designed by Neil Kimball, artist Zoe Plain. Published by AEG. I think we've had a few of those recently. So let me try to sum this up because this was quite a lengthy description. But I kind of want to give you the whole thing because it's kind of a good little theme. I think it's cute and I really enjoy it. Anyway, players are dream sheep who people count in order to fall asleep. You play 1 or 2 cards from your hand to move around the track or charge up special powers. Each time you make it around the track, you get some bonus winks, which are your points. You know, catching winks, right? I guess, or is that how people say it? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, and you have to decide then if you want to try to make 1 more lap before the nightmare catches you, and then maybe 1 more lap again. If all the sheep either escape or are captured by the nightmare, the round's over. And then whoever had the highest winks gets to move their goal, which is the pillow, just a little bit closer on the track. And then the runner-ups get to move it just a little bit less than that. So there's an advantage to getting a lot of points because you'd be in the lead and you move it forward, or closer, I should say. Then all the players pick another power that gets added to the spaces on the board. And then you continue, or I should say your winks, then your points are erased, go back to 0. And you continue until one sheep reaches their pillow with their winks. And I don't know if that makes sense, but I think it will when we kind of describe what we thought about it. But really interesting. I should let you chime in before I just keep going on about it.
Just keep rambling. It's such a good game. I played this back when the podcast first started, and AEG sent out a note saying, "Hey, if anybody wants to go and do a demo, we've got Cubitos and Sheepy time." And I wasn't excited at all about Sheepy time. I looked at the box art. I'm like, whatever. I'll go and I'll take a look at it. And we wound up loving it. I mean, we thought that it was absolutely fantastic. I think, honestly, it's going to be one of the favorite games for me for this year. I was so glad for it to finally come in and hit the table. So I can't emphasize how much I love this.
Apparently not.
So let's start off. It's super easy to teach. Once it's on the table, it's a little bit of a long description. I think you did a good job of trying to sum it up the best you could with words. Once you get it out on the table and you see kind of what's going on, it just kind of clicks and makes sense. The scoring mechanism is a lot like Rajas of the Ganges, where you have 2 different point trackers and you want them to cross. So you have your pillow, like Justin said, that's kind of like your ultimate goal marker that you're trying to get to. And every round, you're going to try to get to that goal marker. And if you can't, well, what can I do to best advance that goal down the track? Get the ability for those 2 to meet and cross. I just really find that mechanism of scoring fascinating. I loved it in Rajas. It was the first time that I saw it. I think it works really well here as well. So I like that. The best description that I probably have for the game is really a family weight pressure luck game that packs a very strategic engine building punch. There's a lot of really good kind of on the fly engine building and determining what the best combo for that game is going to be. The engine building constantly evolves as the game goes on until you have a full board. And then basically it's all about identifying what works the best on the board and just utilizing it as much as you can. So I really like that. I think that evolution and kind of adaptation really is something that I look for in a lot of games. The finished product is exactly what I had hoped for. Lots of replay in the box already, but I'm assuming, because there was definitely some room left over, that they are leaving room for expansions.
And it's got the potential.
Oh, it's certainly got the potential for that. You know, you have more of these abilities that'll come out. I'm sure that an expansion pack will have more of those. And then, you know, more of your nightmares. So it comes with 3 nightmares. 2 of them are basic, and then 1 of them is more advanced. You could have a ton of different nightmares that play differently. I really think that there's a lot of potential for that. Again, I think this is the kind of game that you can get out with just about anybody and have them have a good time and learn it pretty quickly. But as a gamer, you yourself will still have a great time with it as well. Justin, you've got a lot of thoughts. I want to hear what you thought.
I mean, it was such a fun time. Really surprising little game. Again, nothing really got me excited about it, even when you're describing the rules. You know, first off, you described that point scoring, and I hadn't played Rajas. So, but I'm like, oh, why do I care if I have a point tracker in each end? Because I'm thinking like Red Dragon Inn, where really they're the same thing. You know, It doesn't matter. There was no difference between the, you know, hit points and drunkenness and that. But then when we started playing it and it clicked, I'm like, oh, wow, this is cool. I'm moving my goalpost closer. So do I focus on that, or do I just focus on getting points? But I got to get points or temporary points, you know, just to move my goalpost better. I mean, that's a good mechanic, and that was fun. Back to just the game, though. I mean, that's a cute theme, and it's a light game, a light theme, but they fit together well. So, you know, I don't have to break the theme. And for me, that means a lot to me. I don't know why either, but, you know, it just means a lot that the theme fits the mechanics and fits the gameplay, and I don't have to make like a stretch of the imagination to say, yeah, okay, I guess that's what that is. It just works. Yeah, they're both light. Maybe that makes it easier, but it's good. And that said, I like that artwork, especially once we played it. It's wacky.
Oh, yeah.
Wacky, yep. Weirdo little sheep. And if it were up to me, I would want unique sheep on every card if possible. I get it that there's a lot of repeat cards in there, and for the sake of gameplay, you generally want the same artwork on them so it's easier to recognize and play them. But if it were up to me, I would just have endless wacky cartoon artwork sheep on there. So yeah, Press Your Luck, I think, was real central to it. And to me, it was kind of on 2 levels. It's like, okay, am I going to try to make one more run for this fence and not get caught by the nightmare? And then at the same time, if I bail, how much farther are my opponents going to make it too? Because it really matters if they pass. I might be ahead on points, but if I bail early, and they're going to pass me. So, you know, it's kind of on a couple levels there, and that really made the like really juicy decisions. And I was like, yeah, I was just loving it.
There's a couple of different factors that you really have to take into consideration when you're making that choice of whether to stay in. And you mentioned most of them. The other was where that nightmare is on the track. Because if you're sitting like going over the fence and there's 10 spaces on the board, if the nightmare ever jumps over the fence, then everybody's knocked out. Everybody that hasn't escaped. But when the nightmare is like on, you know, 7 or so, it's like, oh, I've got this card that I can move 6 spaces. And maybe I can pick something up that'll get me the rest of the way, but what if the nightmare cards come up and basically move the nightmare right back over? I don't
want to be too close to the nightmare at any time. It gets risky.
Yeah,
there's a lot to weigh. Yeah, it's really fun. I mean, simple, but there's a lot of weight to your decisions, and it feels good. I like it. You call it an engine builder, and I'd say kind of loosely myself. Mainly because all these special abilities, they're open for everybody. The person who puts them out there gets a little bonus, but they're there for all. Although you do have to spend a little effort or turns or any of that to, say, build up some more charges on them to use them. So I guess you could count that.
And that's kind of what I meant by that, was you have to actively understand where to focus your resources in trying to get more charges up.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. The options that are out there for the special abilities in the spaces, I mean, one, it's kind of hard to predict, like, what's going to change as the game evolves and that game board evolves. Where am I going to get the most value out of these? Do I want to pile, some energy on here? And then at the same time, you may not even be able to make it back to that space in time for it to matter. So it's really tricky, and it's kind of interesting that you kind of prep those up. It's not just landing on a space like, Candyland or something. It's, you got to prep it first, and then you got to land there and make that all work out. And, and it may matter what the other players do in between that time too. A lot of decisions, but they're all fun. They're like fun decision. I also didn't feel I said this about a game a week or two ago, that like it had a lot of replay options, but they all seemed like formulaic, just too predictable. It's like, it's just the same thing with a different flavor on it, or a different color. No, these were all quite unique, and all those varied options interact with each other in different ways. And so that just adds to the replayability too, because there's a stack of them. You won't get through all of them in a game. So the next gameplay you go through, you're going to get a whole different set of options, and it'll change your strategy. It's a really, really layered and a whole lot going on. And it's solid. It's so good in such a little game. I'm going to stop. There.
Okay, so
any guess about what your final judgment will be?
God,
I wonder.
I hated it, and I'm gonna throw it out in the trash. No, this game, honestly, like I said up top, is probably gonna be one of my most played this year. I think it's gonna be so easy to get to the table and so easy to teach, as we're getting people back to the table, friends that I haven't seen for quite a while that aren't necessarily into the hobby. I think this will be a great one to bring out and kind of teach them, some concepts about board games, especially with the theme. It's going to be interesting to see their reaction to how deep the game is with this theme on it. One of the feedbacks that I gave when I did the preview with AEG was, I don't know how you would balance the artwork that's on the front, which makes it seem like a kid's game, which I would classify it as playable by the family. It's a 10+ game. I would say you could probably get 8+ to the table with it, no problem. How do you balance that with still attracting the hobbyists, because they can get into it as well? So I don't know exactly how you do that, other than getting it into people's hands and getting the rumor mill going about it. Yeah, word of mouth. That's exactly what it's going to be. So I think this is a very, very solid game. I love it. It's going to be part of my collection for a long, long time to come. So that is Sheepy time. Well, stay tuned, because up next we are going to talk about our game development experiences. Well, and we're back. So, Justin, we were trying to figure out exactly what to discuss as a special topic for this week's episode. And you made a suggestion that we talk about our game development experiences that we've had throughout the years, and kind of becoming a little bit more part of the hobby.
We've been interviewing people about game development, and we've been getting a little bit more back into the swing of things ourselves a bit. And I thought, let's just see what we can say about it. See if we remember way back in the day when we started considering that ourselves.
I think it was just one day at work we decided, you know what, we really like thrifting, and wouldn't that make a cool board game? And we started looking at the design process, and I started getting into listening to podcasts like the Board Game Design Lab, read some material online, and it sounded pretty straightforward. Not easy, because Let me tell you, nothing about the process is easy, but straightforward and cheap to kind of get into and see if something's going to stick or not stick. So we started off with a game called Thriftin', which I had mentioned a couple episodes back when I was talking with Lauren Yu. And we basically took the game all the way to a speed pitching event at Origins back in, I think it was 2019?
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Last one I was at, right?
Yep. Well, last one that we were both at.
Last one anybody was at.
So it's been a process. Everything just kind of started with handwritten note cards that we had cut up that had numbers on them. We had kind of figured out some rough math and decided to get it to the table, played the test round, thought, well, this might be all right. I mean, it seems like it's fun.
So I'm trying to think if I have a different memory about how it came about. And, you know, these will be the legends someday if we ever get this damn thing created.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I don't think we had ever, either of us had considered, like, making board games. And for some reason, we always thought, boy, it'd be fun to make video games, right? I'm sure we grew up thinking I loved to make video games. But we'd never do it because we didn't know how to program or any of that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when it clicked that we could do this, it's like, oh, well, this should be so much more... not easy, but straightforward,
yes.
as you said,
yes.
Because we don't have to worry about that programming stuff, you know? So let's just have fun and make something. But I was trying to think, and people always ask, like, well, did you pick a theme first or the mechanics? And you're saying it was kind of the theme, and maybe it was, but I'm remembering we had a conversation with a coworker about a video game that had a market in it, and he got all into describing the nuances of this video game market, and we're like, well, we could make a board game with a market like that. And maybe we already had the Thriftin' idea.
Maybe
I don't know. And then we slapped it on. It wasn't long between the two kind of just came together. That's why I can't remember, you know? So maybe it is chicken or egg. I don't know. We were there, but we don't remember.
Yeah.
You know?
It was such a long time ago.
Either way, it wouldn't be hard because we have that mutual love for thrift stores. And so it's like, we just want to make a game about thrifting. And then, of course, we immediately think, can we sign on? Oh, damn, what's his name? Oh, you're drawing
Macklemore.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
You're the trivia
yeah.
person.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. We're like, man, can we just sign him on and put a free copy of his CD in every game box or something, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
Put a free single.
Yeah, yeah.
The theme song of Thriftin'.
The theme song of our game that plays through our head while we're playing it.
But the gist of the game wound up basically being that you were competing people in this neighborhood that really loved thrifting.
It seemed totally natural to us.
Yeah, exactly, because we loved it. And it's like, who can get the best value of stuff the cheapest? So it's like the most stuff, the most valued stuff in that. And we also love our Press Your Luck games. So we definitely had some of that in. One of the mechanics that we had worked in was certain items, if you took them off the shelf, they were big and cumbersome. So if you yanked them off the shelf, other stuff would break and wouldn't be available to other players. There was a set collection aspect to it. So you had like clothes and electronics and houseware items and knickknacks and that kind of thing. So, I mean, the theme was definitely there.
Yeah. And the press your luck being that, you know, maybe I'll wait till it makes it to the bargain shelf or something before somebody else snatches it up, right? Because you want to get it cheap, right? It's not enough just to have it.
And it was cheap. It was a sliding market, too, which if you waited from week to week, you know, to have that item kind of shift down, everything got cheaper as the game went on. So it went down to a bottom shelf. Everything would restock at the top level, like no discount shelf, and then it would just progressively get cheaper. And there were things that you could do to kind of misplace it and retag everything. And
well, that said, doesn't help you figure out how we got there, but you know, we had a hell of a lot of fun.
So we went to a lot of playtesting events, which was an interesting experience because we had feedback on our game that we were seeking, but one of the things that we kind of learned was the fact that with feedback that you're trying to get, you also should provide feedback for other people's games as well. So there might be events that you wind up going to that you don't necessarily get your game tested, but you get to play like some really cool concepts of games.
That was that kind of first exposure to that side of the community, the helping each other part of the community.
Mm-hmm. Which we absolutely love about it, and I think that's one of the best parts of it. The playtesting events, especially Ultimate Team Up, was one of the big ones. Gerald King was a huge part of that, very selflessly ran these events, gave a lot of his time to helping others out, setting up these playtest events and organizing everything and making sure that, people got space and time and people rallied up to go in and play test. So I think that there are so many good people in the community that are trying to get the community built. They're trying to help others. And that's something that we really first kind of saw with these events was the love that kind of goes into, not only your own game, but others' games as well.
I would say that I think in gaming circles, people often get this impression that they're, sometimes it's unwelcoming and gatekeepery and all that. And I think we felt some of that too when it was just sitting down to play things, just randomly at a convention or whatnot, And then once you got into this part of the developer side of things, it's like, this is a community. And people want to build each other up. And I think that's why we kind of got stuck in that. For a long time, we weren't actively working on anything, either of us, yet we tried to stay part of that, right? So it's a good feeling.
Yeah. It's really a fun thing to do, to be able to provide feedback to somebody's game that you may see on a store shelf one day. You may wind up in somebody's manual that they're crediting you for being part of that. That was one of my favorite parts of the community. I wanted to talk about our speed pitching event experience at Origins, because I think that kind of summed up both the good and the bad of the community as well.
It did. How to capture that. I will say, boy, that was tough for me. It was uncomfortable for me. I'm not one who likes to get myself out there. And you got to be a self-promoter. And that isn't me. Despite that somehow you got me on a podcast here, right? We went in with these heavily prepared pitches and practiced, and we tried to still make it natural. And the whole gist of the speed pitch event was we were going to get like 20 groups of developers or publishers to come in and critique our what was it, like, was it even 5 minutes a pitch? It might be, but it seems too long.
No, it was 5 minutes. It seemed shorter.
It went quick, but time for comments and all that too, of course, right? So you give like a 1 or 2 minute pitch. We had all this prepared. After my second go around, they're like, just stop, just tell me this about it, tell me that about it, and I'm like, okay. And then I was more comfortable. I didn't want to be prepared and scripted, and then I just started talking about my game. I don't think we had separated. I was working on a different one, and you were working on Thrifting.
You're working on your current project.
My current game is still working on it. Yeah, Titan. Yep. I don't think I approached it properly. I think I've learned a lot since then. And I think they were trying to coach me on how to do those things, and I slowly maybe absorbed it after it was all over, right? A few of those groups that came through, I remember a couple of them, but I can't remember exactly who all of them were, but one, maybe we'll get to in a minute. They just really tried to coach me, not on my game necessarily, but on this role of being a developer and pitching in general, right? And that was supremely helpful. It just took a long time to soak in, But I think the main things are just focusing on what makes your game fun. You don't need to describe it in detail, but tell people why they're going to have fun playing this game. Another one that came to me from Matthew, actually, that we've recently had on the show is, who's the audience? And pay attention to who your audience is. Who are you trying to get to play this game and enjoy it and have a good time? Focus on that. That's important. That said, how about on your end of the room?
So there were two stories that I wanted to get into. The first one, I'm going to get the negative one out of the way first, because I want to end with the very positive one that, again, I feel sums up the majority of the community and certainly the parts of the community that we hope are mostly pervasive. The first one, and both of us experienced this. We had a gentleman that came by the table with a group and basically like ripped into everything. It wasn't like constructive criticism. It wasn't, hey, I see an opportunity for you to, maybe improve this. Something that you try to spin things in a positive way. You don't just say your game sucks and you're a failure and all of that, because especially if that's somebody's first experience doing this, in our case it was, that can hurt, that can discourage, and it can be a big issue that people don't want to return after that.
It was just pick apart things. And I'm like, oh boy, this is gonna, and I got that group pretty early and I was like, ooh, I am not prepared for this. And then after that, things went really great.
I remember you texting me and being like, watch out for this one because it's going to be rough. So it just felt like it felt horrible. And then I saw, and there were some very good groups with a lot of, very constructive feedback. Hey, this game isn't for us, but we think that these people would like it. Let me give you their contact info, that kind of thing. The best one that I can think of was a guy that goes by the name of Breeze. He was a designer of a game called Aegis. Mm-hmm. Aegis.
Have you talked about that on the podcast? I think that was kind of pre-podcast.
It was pre-podcast.
It's a very fine game. You tell me. I'd like to sit down and play it with you.
Oh, it's fantastic. I need to get it out again. But it's really my go-to like mech combat game. I wasn't huge into the mech combat arena, but I really, really like how this plays. But Breeze basically took your game. He was very excited about it and said, hey, I can't publish this. I'm just going to tell you straight up, I can't publish this. But I think I've got some people who might be interested. And Origins is a very busy place. He's trying to sell his own game, because he had the booth there and everything. And he took time out of his booth, basically walked you over to this other developer and introduced you personally, and which took quite a bit of time because it was all the way across the convention hall.
Yeah.
And you had a very nice discussion.
And it gets a little more, to me, unbelievable than that. He went ahead and cleared off one of their tables, said, go ahead, set up your game here. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You just threw all their stuff off their own booth.
Own table, yeah,
and
I
then
forgot about that.
let me fidget around and pull all my junk out of this box and handmade cards and set it up and then try to talk to them about the game. But I mean, how stellar, that he helped me get me introduced, and and he wasn't kidding, right? They were interested to talk to me, and they were apparently welcoming of me just dumping their stuff on the floor and showing them my game. It was a really fantastic experience.
Unfortunately, with the amount of games I have, I see a lot of people setting up booths and that at a convention, and I might give their game like a side glance, and if it doesn't catch me like immediately, I'm out. Like I just don't really care. And the whole mech combat thing, the anime style, didn't really appeal to me all that much.
And we've been burned on mech games before.
Oh, we've definitely been burned before on those. So I looked at that and I said, you know what? If he's going to be that nice to take Justin over, I will sit and I will demo the game and see if it's for me. I wound up buying it because I enjoyed it. Not necessarily just because he was a nice guy and helped Justin out and that, but also the fact that it got me there and it got me, kind of excited about what he was showing off as well.
You want to support good people.
Yeah, it's a good thing to do, but you also definitely want to support good people. And I think that it's one of those things that if you do good things, it'll come back around for you.
Good things happen. You got one more thing on your shelf, but it was a good one.
It was absolutely a good one. Yeah. And I got rid of a bad one.
Yeah, exactly. It is a surefire to be like, we're dumping this other mech game.
Yep. That I was kind of on the fence about. So
yeah,
it worked out.
We didn't know better.
Yeah, no kidding. What do you mean that more minis isn't a good thing necessarily? Yeah. The lessons that we've learned are something that we will talk about another day. But we just wanted to kind of tell you guys some stories that we had from development. And I know Justin's currently in the process of going through and continuing to develop his game. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure more of these stories are bound to come out of that.
Well, and hopefully there'll be some really exciting ones again. I mean, and we've discussed this at length with our, other podcasts with Matthew and such. But I got to think, I wonder if anybody was able to tease any valuable information out of this, or if we were just regaling tales.
Yes.
Well, we'll let them tell that. Maybe somebody will email us again and
say, shut up, we don't want to hear this.
Or say, stop it, that was a waste of time.
Or say, hey, we really like hearing your stories, we want to hear more of them. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, if you get any takeaway from it, look up Aegis. It's a fantastic game.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it and highly recommend it.
I haven't played it, but I 100% trust your take, and I'm excited to try it.
Someday. When we get through the 177 others.
We have to talk about that. That we have to talk about.
Yes, exactly.
We want to talk about Excel games. Your Excel game this is nearly a flat line. It's going to be 2035 before that number hits 0. It's not looking good. Your prognosis is pretty poor.
Yeah, it's pretty flat. But I think that's all the time that we have for today's episode. Make sure to check out our Facebook page. Our Instagram and Twitter is at cardboard_time.
I have a Instagram at jphomer98.
Take a look at our Board Game Geek podcast page. And if you have any questions, suggestions, or ideas for discussion topics, make sure to email cardboardtime@gmail.com. And as always, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you again in another 2 weeks for an episode of Cardboard Time.